Hello and welcome to my tutorial on how to do a little Flash cartoon like the one that you're looking at here. I think I first saw this at knowflash.com. That's K-N-O-W Flash. So we see the 8-ball with a soft-edged cast shadow, a couple of clouds in the background that are also soft-edged, graded sky and ground, and his eyes move around a little bit. So let's take a look at how to do this here. We go to open a new Flash file, and this is CS4 that I'm using. My students use an earlier version of Flash, so things look a little bit different here. So go to the first layer and call it backdrop. And for the backdrop, we're going to need to use some sort of graded space. So you use the rectangle tool, and you want to make sure that the outline is turned off. There's me finding the color in the windows there. So there's the indication that the stroke color is turned off. And there's my bucket tool, and I'm going to use a graded fill. So if you've got the window open for color, you should see these two colors at either end. Double click on that one, and you can pick the color that the white's going to fade into. So when you draw a rectangle, you'll notice that it's facing the wrong way. A graded sky should grade lighter towards the horizon. Use the free transform tool and spin it like that, and use it to fill in the spaces right to the edge of the stage. Don't make it bigger than the stage, otherwise if you do any animation out towards the edges, they'll sort of disappear. So that's what our sky looks like. Next, I need to draw some ground, so all you need to do is just pick a different color for the white to fade into, draw another rectangle. Again, it doesn't matter what size it is or whatever, because we're going to stretch it to fill the space. So I rotate it using the free transform tool and squish it up into the stage. And stretch it out and stretch it up. And the backdrop isn't that important for this particular tutorial. I notice when I click on it here that there's a bit of a white stripe along the edge there at the horizon, so I made the ground a little bit bigger. Okay, so there's our backdrop. You lock it and save it. When you save files, in my class anyway, I want to make sure that you give them the right name. So just like our other naming protocols, always start with a period first, underscore, your last name, underscore, and the name of the assignment. You can call this 8-ball. And just make sure you're paying attention to where it goes. When I opened this up, actually it was another student project folder that originally opened there. So I'm saving it to the desktop. It'll be easy to find. To create a new layer, you click on that little button, just like in Photoshop. This is where the face is going to go. And in this case I'm going to use the oval tool. Remember, you want, in this case, you're going to have black. Make sure that that stroke color is still off. So here I am trying to draw a circle. Oh, it's an oval. Gee, I wish I could draw a better circle. Well, hold the Shift key down. When you do that and you drag the mouse, you always get a circle. Same thing goes with the rectangular tool. You'll get a perfect square if you hold down the Shift key and drag. So you like it, you lock it, you save it, go to a new layer, and on this layer we're going to put the eyes. Now, why would I draw these all on different layers? Well, you never know what you're going to decide to animate later on. Anything that you want to animate should be on its own layer. So that's why I'm putting these things on separate layers. So there, I've drawn one eye, and I'm trying to get the other eye just the same size and shape and whatever. Here's what you could do instead. Select the object, right-click, and copy it, and then paste. And now you know you've got exactly the same size and shape for the other eye. So the eyes are done. Like it, lock it, save it, create a new layer, and this is for the mouth. Everything else is pretty much the same. I'm still using the oval tool. I draw a little mouth like that. And again, because this is on its own layer, if later on I decided to animate the mouth, I could do so. Now I'm going to add the shine. This is where we start to use some of the more advanced stuff in here. I'm going to zoom in a little closer so you can see what it looks like when I start to try to draw with a brush tool. So the brush tool basically uses whatever's in the paint bucket, and you need to select a size for the brush tool. So I think it's hard to see where my mouse is there, but anyway, that's the size of a brush stroke I get. And it's great if you can get the shine in just one stroke. I didn't quite. It actually took me 3 movements. And because there's 3 movements, depending on the version of Flash you're using, you actually need to select those and group them together. Otherwise, each individual brushstroke might be treated differently when you go to do things like soften the fill edge. So I just modified the group, double click on it, then go to Modify Shape, Soften Fill Edges. Now it's set at 15 pixels from something else I was doing. You can see that's way too big. So I'm going to go back in, Soften Fill Edges, and I think I put in 5. 5 works. That looks pretty good. So double click off of it, and now I can see my shine looks like a shine. So I'll zoom back out, and you like it, you lock it, you save it. I'm going to create a new layer here. Now what I'm going to do is put in the shadow. And the shadow has to go behind the face. So whatever order the layers are over in the timeline is how close they are to the viewer. So obviously the shadow has to be under the face. So I get my oval tool and I draw something like that. Again, the outline was turned off. So I select the object, and sometimes you need to modify the group. I think I do that anyway here. And then I double click on it. And I do the same thing I did for the shine, except in this case 15 works a little bit better. And after you do something like that, it's also a good idea to modify the group. Depending on the version of Flash you're using, again, the softened edge becomes a separate object. And if you go to move it like this, you'll move the inside of the shadow, but you'll leave the soft edged outline behind. So if you modify the group, the whole thing moves together. So there's the cast shadow, which if you needed to change the shape of a little bit, you'd be able to use the free transform tool to do that. So I don't know if I did lock it. There we go. You like it, you lock it, you save it. Now we're going to add in the pupils. If you notice, for now, everything has only been on the first keyframe. Getting just the right brush size. That's going to be about right. And make the pupils, I don't know, you can make them any color you want, but I think I made mine red. There we go. Just one little click will give you your pupils in each case. Now what I want is for the pupils to move together, so I need to select the two of them and modify to group. Notice the hotkey there, the Command G. So now I should have a little blue rectangle that goes around both pupils, which means that anytime I go to drag them, they'll move together as a pair. Now before I get into animating, if you notice, I just changed my frame rate. Flash in CS3 defaults to 12 frames per second, whereas CS4 defaults to 24. So I've gone to frame 60 and selected all of them and inserted a frame. That creates 5 seconds of animation at 12 frames per second. So you right click at frame 6 or something like that and insert a keyframe. Now I can drag the pupils somewhere and then right click between those frames, and in this case it's a classic tween. using newer versions of Flash, you want to call it a classic tween. So I just drag the timeline there and I can see that movement. So right click a little bit further along again and insert a keyframe. Drag the pupil somewhere else and right click between the two and create a classic tween. So it's really just a matter of continuing doing that a few times until the eyes have moved around just about everywhere I want them to go. Now one thing I show you here, I think, is that if you need to fine-tune the position of the eyes, or any object, I drag them up there and it's like, I want them just, oh, can't quite get them in the right spot. Use the cursor buttons and you can fine-tune the movement of an object that way. The little arrow buttons with an object selected will move the object around in very short, distant increments. So just a couple more animations here to finish up the eyes. And again, 60 frames. Why did I pick 60? Because I wanted 5 seconds of animation. 5 times 12 frames per second is 60 frames. And I've finished with the pupils back in the same spot they started, which when the animation cycles, it just kind of means that the eyes don't just sort of jump a bit of a distance, although the whole thing gets ruined with the way they animate the clouds, but there's not much you can do about that. So there's what it looks like, and the eyes come back to the middle, and they sort of zigzag there, but that's good enough.